Well, welcome back to the Pew, everybody. I'm your host, John Edwards, and here again this week is my good friend and guest for the show, Deacon Jeff Drzymski.
They call me Deacon Jeff, The Price is Right, Drzymski.
That's right. That's right.
I will be on anybody's show for free, so just please reach out. I love to talk.
So I've got a Shoney's gift card and some McDonald's fries coming your way.
That's more than I've ever gotten before. That's awesome.
Right.
I'm a rich man.
That's right. Hey, man, if you're good, you could be cheap, right? That's right. So, well, man, I'm glad to have you again. Thanks for being on the show.
When people are watching this right now,
Yeah.
by the way, you are probably like drinking wine and eating pizza with
In
the
Italy.
Pope.
Yeah.
You were sitting with the Pope at the Vatican.
Probably looking for some old lady that got with the wrong group and she's somehow in another town.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever. It's okay.
Right.
That's all right.
I
Have
told you
fun.
the red flag. You know, it's like not the green one.
Following on your pilgrimage.
No, but we love our pilgrims. We love going on those trips. I'm excited to be in Italy. And yes, we're recording this episode because we're going to be gone for a few weeks and we wanted to do something. And you came in, did that wonderful episode on marriage with us. And I thank you for that. Hope it helped a lot of people.
I'm announcing my divorce, by the way.
Oh, man. I'm sorry.
No.
Well, it looks like
Still
we'll be
going
talking.
strong.
Yeah,
36 years, still going strong.
Yeah, I guess the next one will be called "What to Do When You Could Do Nothing."
Yeah,
right. Like that's right. So, but no, I'm glad to have you back in here. I know a lot of folks probably were helped with that episode. I mean, I'm sure by the time this comes out, we'll probably receive a lot of emails about it because I know so many men are struggling in that. But I wanted to talk to you about something that, oddly enough, I don't think we've, as many times as you've been on here, as many times you filled in for Victor, I don't know that we've ever talked about the diaconate and the importance of the diaconate. And I know that's something, obviously you are a deacon and that's a call that you felt on your life. And, that is a very vital and important role in the church. And a lot of times, let's be honest, we talk about vocations to the priesthood, and which we should, because if we don't have priests, we can't have the sacraments, right? Like we need priests, but there's also a role for the deacons that we see, the early church started to wrestle with and to say, okay, we need other people to do things that we don't have the time to do or can't do, that have charisms to do that better than we do. And I know that in certain parts of the country, there's a lot of guys becoming deacons. I know I was in Beaumont and they have a huge class down there. I know in Memphis, we've got a good sized class here, but it's something I think a lot of guys don't think about. They either say okay, I feel a call to religious life, so that means be a priest, or I feel a call to be married. Yeah. And we don't realize or don't really think about sometimes that there's another option there to become a deacon and how vital that is to the church. And so I know you've been in charge of deacons before here in the diocese. You've been a deacon now for what? How many years?
16 years.
16 years.
Just had my 16th anniversary.
Yeah, well, congratulations.
Yeah,
congratulations. So you're not a quitter. That's good.
Well, they haven't caught on yet.
That's right. That's right.
Another year.
Yeah, that's right. Did you get that clerics at Party City? Or
I got my letter of suitability.
That's right. So, but no, I know that's something that's near and dear to your heart. And I know there's a lot of guys out there that may not even realize I'm being called not to just to be a faithful man, but to be called a little bit further into the diaconate and to be of service to the church in that way. So what do you think about that?
Oh, yeah, no, that's great. And you mentioned like prayer and things like that when we talk about we pray at Mass, like the intercessory prayer. I'm getting ready to ruin intercessory prayer for you forever.
Oh, gosh.
And here's why. It's something you notice when you become a deacon. Whenever a parish, typically, it's not every time, but typically, when you the little books where they send out to all the different parishes, it's like, here's some sample intercessory prayers to use at Mass for the the prayer of the faithful, and so it's like when it says, it'll say, for an increase of vocations to the priesthood and the religious life, we pray to the Lord. Lord, hear our prayer. Now, in that prayer, which is beautiful and it's good, you ignore the deacons. You're not praying for deacons because deacons are not priests and we are not religious. Like religious are brothers and sisters, monks. They're not ordained, but they live a vowed, consecrated life with a community.
Like the LaSallian brothers or something like that.
That's exactly right?
Yeah.
And so we're praying for an increase of brothers and sisters, and we're praying for an increase of priests, but we're not praying for deacons.
I didn't know we were shafting you guys like
we
that.
We are. So that's why I'm saying I've ruined it for you, because you're going to hear this and you're going to go like, Deacon Jeff was right.
I'm just going to throw it in there every time I'm praying it.
Well, I know. And now there are a lot of places that pay attention to that now, and and they will mention deacons. And the reason I say it's not because we're getting short shrift. It's not because I feel like wounded and hurt that they're not mentioning deacons. It's really because it's like the deacon has a vital and valuable role that's been part of the church from the very beginning.
Yeah, from Acts.
Right,
yeah.
Acts chapter 6, when like the Greeks and the Hellenists were being neglected, right? They're the widows and orphans, and they're like y'all are just taking care of the Jews.
Sure.
You know, what about these people? It's like, okay, here's what we're going to do. You go find men of good repute and of faith out of your group, and send them to us, and then we'll have them take care of you. And so they lay hands on them. In other words, they ordained them to service. And it's like, wow, okay. So they felt that's the way they wanted to deal with it. So then the priests, the apostles then, but the priests then are there to make the offerings on behalf of the people. And it's still that way today. If you look at a mass, like at a mass where the liturgy is done the way the church instructs us to do, the priest basically is offering the mass for whatever the offering is, right? For that reason for today.
Sure.
But also he will turn to the deacon who's doing the universal prayer, right? That's the prayers of the faithful that happen right before the liturgy of the Eucharist. And so it's supposed to be, the rubrics tell us it's the deacon that announces those. Now, some parishes do things a little differently. Shame on you, some parishes. But the thing is that they do that way, but there's a connection between the deacon, because basically what the priest is saying is, I'm offering this mass, and deacon, for what shall I pray? You know the people. Tell me what I should be praying for. And then the people reads this list of like, you need to pray for the disenfranchised, you need to pray for the poor, you need to pray for our Holy Father, you need to pray for this, pray for this. And they list off these things, and also pray for the repose of the soul of so-and-so who this mass is being offered for. And the priest says, thank you very much. That's exactly what he'll do. And he offers a prayer, right? And that's that ancient role. And the deacons, like there's other places in the Bible where we don't even recognize because we have an English translation.
Yeah.
But like when Jesus is in the desert, right, for 40 days, it says God sent an angel to minister to him, right? Well, the Greek word that's used for minister in that place is diakonia. Now, what does that sound like to you? So an angel deacons to Jesus, right, ministering to him. And I would imagine that the angel was there to, lift him up, hold him up, feed him, give him water after 40 days. He was certainly tired, to take care of him, to wipe his fevered brow, basically. And if you look at today, the deacon is uniquely positioned, like as usually, typically, like 90% of deacons are married or have been married, and they have a widow or whatever. But they are ministers to people in need, right? And they're usually involved in works of charity and goodness, support, and basically diakonia in the community, right? Well, that's really important. I mean, and for a parish to say, we don't really need that. I mean, that's one of the whole reasons for a parish.
Sure.
Right? Is to care for the family. That's why they call that priest there father, right? He is the father of the people in that parish boundary. And so he has this need to take care of those people. Well, the deacon is somebody theologically who is positioned, who came out of the people and still has kind of a foot in that world. He is clergy. He's 100% clergy. He has been ordained, but he is freshly plucked from this environment that's around him, and he's not aloof and distanced from it. He's connected to it. He usually has a job, usually has a wife, a mortgage, a dog, car payments. He's usually got all that stuff. So he's very close to like the daily needs of the world, and yet he's been pulled from that into clergy. And so he's uniquely positioned to minister to those people, right? And priests are all busy, right? They're really very busy.
Well, and a lot of them, I was telling you before the show, I was talking to a parish yesterday in the north, in Ohio somewhere. And he was saying, I'm now in charge of 3 parishes. Like the bishop put me over 3 parishes. I don't have an associate. So he was talking about like depending on the deacons and how often they have to do things that he can't get to because he's running around different places. So they're taking, the Eucharist to people in the hospital. They're seeing to the sick. They're ministering to the needs and other ways of the parishioners. And, and I just feel like sometimes we look past the importance and the roles the deacons play. It's like, oh, they'll just do RCIA and then they'll be at Mass every once in a while.
And a lot of people don't even know.
Yeah.
A lot of people look up and they see a deacon like on a Sunday at Mass with Father, and he's standing next to him. They're going like, man, he's got a fancy helper there.
Yeah.
But they don't really understand. They don't notice that he's got a dalmatic and not a chasuble, or some of these subtle differences they might. And the dalmatic, again, has this history because they're serving the table, right? And so the waiter is going to have his sleeves tied up so his sleeves don't get caught on all the stuff, right?
Sure, yeah.
There's just like little things like that you never even noticed. Like in the dalmatic, it's interesting to note that the dalmatic is supposed to have 2 stripes that go down. Mm-hmm. So the priest has this Y-shaped thing typically, which is the orphrey, right? Oremus, the same Latin root as pray, right? Hands, Well, the deacon has these 2 stripes that are actually called clavi, right? And that Latin, in the word Latin, is key. Okay. He has these keys. Well, what is the significance of that? He ran the treasury. In the early church, the deacon had the keys to the treasury. In fact, when a really bad guy came to St. Lawrence and said, give me the treasures of the church, like, what does he do? It led to his death.
Yeah.
He said he went and got all the poor people, said, here's the treasury of the church.
Sure.
Right? And so he didn't like that, and so he got put to death. But those clavi represent the keys to like all the goods of the church to be poured out on the people in need. Mm-hmm. And when you look at that theologically, then you start to realize there's a need for a man who is called to be set apart, who essentially is going to be ordained, have the bishop's hands laid upon him to consecrate, but really to change the very character of his soul forever, to make him this diaconia, this servant to the church, right? And to conform his life to Christ the servant. And when you do that, then he's got this special place. It doesn't mean he does all the charity work.
Yeah.
Right? In fact, it's kind of confusing to some because they go like, well, he's doing Mass. I mean, what,
Sure.
And some guys who think, well, I want to be a deacon because I want to be able to preach a homily.
Yeah.
Or I want to be able to be up there with Father at the altar. It's like, well, that's good, but there's like this threefold piece of the deacon's ministry. That like when you're ordained as a deacon, you were ordained to be a servant of the word, a servant of liturgy, and a servant of charity. Right? Yeah. So word, liturgy, and charity, it's a threefold mission. They're all equal, right? But they're all connected.
Yeah.
Like, liturgy actually runs through all those. I mean, you are giving yourself in service. In charity, you're giving yourself to the church to function in liturgy, right? But also you proclaim the word in liturgy. So you will read the gospel at Mass. You lead communion services. You can actually do funerals and weddings outside of Mass.
Sure.
So there are things that a deacon is ordained to do to serve the people. And then, of course, there's that charitable aspect that is not always tied to liturgy, can also be tied to like literally going out and helping those in need, right? To volunteer, to be part of the parish activities, to run sometimes the soup kitchen or whatever.
Yeah.
You don't have to be ordained to run the soup kitchen. Anybody can do that.
Sure.
And that's a good and noble thing for a layperson to do. But when you're ordained, it becomes this character of who you are. Mm-hmm. And you see that you're suddenly to yourself, you have a greater meaning and greater purpose. And it's very fulfilling as a man who's like kind of going like, well, what do you want me to do?
Sure.
What are you calling me to be? And it's like, wow. And then you realize, talking about fulfillment. And the other good thing, I'm not bragging, but the other good thing about this is that deacons are like basically some of the only people that get to have all 7 sacraments.
Yeah, there you
Holy
go.
Matrimony and holy orders. Just saying.
Yeah,
so if you want to have all 7 sacraments, come on over.
That's right. Come on over and be a deacon. You get one more than most other people. Yeah, that's right. Well, let me ask you this. Like, so personally, I know you were a convert, right? You weren't always Catholic. That's correct, right?
Yeah, I'm a revert.
Revert. That's
born
right.
and raised Catholic, fell away.
And then came back.
Actually, I leaped off a cliff.
Yeah, Baptist, right?
No, non-denominational evangelical.
And I told everybody we were friends, and I really don't know anything.
It's all right. It's okay. It was non-denominational evangelical, but it's still not Catholic.
Sure. But I mean, like at some point, you come back to the faith, And then what was it in your life? Because I know there's probably some guys. In fact, I know there's guys that listen that have reached out saying, I'm thinking about going to diaconate.
Yeah.
Like, what was it for you? What happened in your life?
Yeah,
where you were
okay.
just like,
That's a longer story,
yeah.
but I can suffice. I can say in a short way that like I was far away from my faith when I fell away. I mean, that's how you fall away, right?
Sure, yeah.
I was very, very non-committal and I was kind of okay with it.
Sure.
And then, but as I got older, I started realizing I had this hole in my heart that was not filled with all the things that I thought it would be. And it was only Jesus that would be able to fill that. So I wanted to be closer to Jesus. But then that's when I went and to visit our Protestant brothers and sisters, God bless them, because they put me on a road, a connection with Jesus. But then I started churching, like looking for I'm church shopping. I want to find the best church.
Yeah.
Plus, I'm married to Bess, lifelong Catholic. She ain't doubting her faith one bit. She's never leaving, and she's not going to let us raise our kids anywhere but in the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
And reminded me we made that promise, yada, yada, yada.
Sure.
So I'm seeing a lot of stress there that I caused.
Sure.
Right? Thinking like, well, we could just kind of split time. We can do some over here and some over there. It's like, no, Jeff, we can't do that. So I'm starting like, well, let me find the right church. I want to find the true one. If I can tell her it's not. Well, I found it's the Catholic. I mean, long story short, church fathers started reading, going like, oh my goodness, everybody who was, I mean, everybody in the early church was Catholic. There wasn't anything else. And they all believed Catholic things, even if you want to claim that Augustine wasn't really Catholic. No. He was Catholic. You read his writings, you suddenly go, oh, yeah, he's Catholic.
Yeah.
So I came back. Now, so when you come back, so you got Jesus, you're fired up with a relationship with Jesus, and you refound your Catholic faith. You put those two things together, and it's like, how am I going to, this new explosion, I want to do something, right? And interestingly, I don't tell a lot of people this because I lost the picture, but I found my mom was busy back when she was alive. She gave me a big box full of old stuff. She liked to give all the old pictures. These are pictures of you when you're a kid, whatever. So she gave me this thing. I was looking at it, and I saw a picture of me like with my first communion class, and it was at Holy Rosary.
Oh, wow.
It was at Holy Rosary Catholic Church. I'm looking, going like, that's Holy Rosary. I had my first communion there. I kind of forgot. I didn't pay attention to all that stuff.
Yeah.
Guys, we do that, right?
Yeah.
Little girls remember the dress they had, and they probably still have it in some kind of big box upstairs.
I remember
or
what I
whatever.
did yesterday.
I know. So I'm like going, man, I got like my first communion there. My relationship with Jesus started there in a profound way where I knew. And so then I felt this hunger to be like there. And I was going to Holy Rosary Church at that time.
Sure.
As a family, we were going there.
Where we both go now.
Yeah. And so it's like, and I had recalled that like as a younger man, when I started to leave the church, when I was kind of whatever, I was kind of, I used to go to St. Louis Church when I could drive myself.
Yeah.
Because I stayed out in the narthex out there, and I didn't go into the church.
Okay.
Right. And the only time I saw the church was when, like, the usher guy with the toupee would come out and say, he'd go, "Shh, y'all are you're too noisy out here."
Sure.
And I'd peek in there and go, "Oh yeah, there's a church in there." You know, I never went in.
Yeah.
I didn't go in. I missed mass so many times as a young man, and then to see like this memory of me as a kid receiving First Communion with this class, like up at the altar of Holy Rosary, or up in the sanctuary, and realizing that I had stayed away from the sanctuary, I thought like maybe the Lord is calling me somehow to be in the sanctuary. And the thing is, he's not calling me to be a priest, so I guess there's nothing oh wait. Then I discover one of my friends is a deacon. And I go, tell me about this diaconate, where I thought at first it was really just a glorified altar server. Then I start looking at the theology and find out, oh, there's way more. There's liturgy, there's that altar thing, but there's also word, proclaiming the word, teaching, like breathing the word to the people. And then there's this charity, being amongst the people, and in goodness and love, sharing with them the bounty of the Lord. And it's like I realized, man, I think maybe I'm being called to this.
Wow.
And then the rest is history.
Yeah, so you just decide and you go in, and what was, I mean, I imagine knowing you, probably the studying and the learning of the faith and all that stuff was very attractive to you too.
You know, here's the funny thing.
Yeah.
I think it was attractive, but I kind of already had done it.
Okay. Yeah.
And I don't mean
yeah.
that I didn't study, because when we were going through formation, then I had to study like the church books. I had to start to understand the liturgy. And a lot of people think wrongly about the liturgy. They think the liturgy is this worship service. It's the thing we do.
Yeah.
But really, it's really an experience of prayer and worship that is part of our culture, but who we are and our relationship with God. It's much more than like this 1 hour long or 45-minute long thing that we go and we do. Mm-hmm. It really is a sacred coming home or communion. Mm-hmm. And so understanding how to properly do that in line with how the church expects us, so we don't ever lose that quality of it, right? Of that, we don't ever lose that communion with God in that way. That's important. And so suddenly I had to pay attention to things that before I just assumed, because they did all that stuff and they got this book they're reading out of. I suppose I can read out of a book.
Sure.
Well, when I started to study the books, I started to realize that all of these rubrics, the red writing, the stuff that they have in there, none of it is superfluous. It never says in any of the books, the Missale Romanum, the Roman Missal that they have the masses in. It never in there says like, do this because it looks good.
Yeah, that's right.
People will be really impressed if you do it like this.
Yeah.
And instead, it's like, do it like this because this is where this comes from and this is why we do it. And this is the best way to show the majesty of God and to relate that to the people.
Yeah.
And then when you do that well, the people are like, I feel so close to God. That's why we have all these discussions now about which liturgy is best.
Sure.
And I'm not going to put a dog in that fight right now, but whatever you do and wherever you go, you need to be invested in what's happening and realize that what is happening has a why to it.
Sure.
And it is not superfluous. I mean, from the priest washing his hands to the incensing of the gifts to reading this at this point to saying those words at that point, everything has meaning. Mm-hmm. And it's a sacred and covenantal and holy meaning. And it leads to sacrament, which is essentially this outward sign that connotes an inward grace, right?
Yeah.
That gives us grace. And like then you start to realize, okay, that's how we get grace. Okay, this is good, right? So I want to do it right. So that's, as a deacon, that was attractive to me because I'd never really studied all that stuff before.
Well, what about for guys that may be really considering it again? Obviously it's a process. It's 5 years? I mean, it's
pretty much. There's different programs, but typically they're all between 5 and 8 years long.
Yeah. So what are some things guys should really look at if they're seriously considering the diaconate?
I'll tell you what not to look at.
Okay.
I'm going to start there.
That might be better.
The reason why is there's two lies that are told.
Yeah.
Not necessarily by the church or church people, but by the culture, right? One lie is you got kids at home, you got little kids, you can't do this. Yeah. You need to wait.
You don't have enough time.
The other is you've got a full-time job, you got to make this money, you got to do all the things you need to do, and you need to wait until you retire. Mm-hmm. So what will happen if you do that, and that's happened a lot, is you're going to have a bunch of you're going to ordain a bunch of 70-year-old men. Now there's nothing wrong with a 70-year-old man that is called to this ministry that is going to be ordained. I want to make that clear.
Yeah.
But you don't want all your deacons to be 70.
Yeah, they all retire at the same time. You don't have any,
right? Because it's like, may your 3-year ministry be blessed.
That's right. Yeah, thanks for the 6 months.
Right. You know, and so the reality is, we need younger deacons. We need men who've been lied to and have been told that, like, well, if you got little kids at home, you shouldn't do this. Yeah. I'm going to tell you this: it's doable. It is definitely doable.
Well, yeah, we got Deacon Greg at our parish, and he's got a young boy and a family and all those things.
Well,
too,
I set the record.
30s.
I set the record. So when I went through formation, I started formation with 7 kids at home.
Oh wow!
7 kids at home, and
that fellows, no excuses.
That's right. And we had 2 babies. In during formation in those 5 years.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, so you can do that. And we missed fewer classes. We paid attention. We wanted to make sure that we weren't missing them, whatever, than anybody else. And the reason is, I think God paves the way. God makes things work seamlessly and weaves all this. Did I say to the kids, like, hey, we're probably not going to go to Disney for a little while, because Daddy's got to stay tuned into this for a little while, whatever.
Sure.
But they still did their sports programs. I mean, everything just kind of worked seamlessly. We had to make some adjustments, but they were fine. And the kids don't look back and go like, we were robbed. Yeah. We had an absentee dad. It's like some kind of Hollywood star dad who's never home. And it's like, it wasn't like that at all. And then also, for you guys out there that are in your 40s, and you're thinking like, well, I'm not really. You have to be 35 to be ordained,
Right.
right? And so that's a number that may seem like an arbitrary number, but at the same time, it's like you're over 35.
Yeah.
You should at least be considering a call to the diaconate. I mean, if you want to be closer to the church, closer to Jesus, and also closer to the people of the church. When I say closer to the church, I mean the people, the church,
not the building,
the
the
body
people,
of Christ. You will necessarily get closer to the building and to the priesthood and to all these things, right? Because of your service and how you serve the parish. But if you're that guy and you're thinking like, I need to wait until I've gotten that next promotion or whatever, it's like the people right now who are waiting later and later to have kids. We're having smaller families. In fact, we're not replacing ourselves in the United States. It's like 1.8 or 1.9 that doesn't. We need to have 2.1 babies each couple to replace ourselves. So we're all these other societies. You look at the French. You look at those folks. They're all dwindling. They're not going to exist in 50 years.
Wow.
It's really scary numbers when it comes to that thing. But if you wait to have kids until you're later, it's going to bring destruction to the world. It's going to be bad for the world.
Sure.
So when you get married, you should be thinking instantly of like, we need to, all right, let's propagate. Let's make this thing happen.
Sure.
It's not about the numbers. It's about like, we talked in the marriage show. It's about this fruitfulness. You were married to be, your love should be fruitful.
Yeah, go and multiply. First commandment God gave.
Exactly. Well, it gets right down to the nuts and bolts, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, you should be multiplying also in joy and fulfillment.
Yeah.
And that is necessarily going to also encounter, like children will be involved in this.
Sure.
They are the natural fruit of a marriage. Well, so like if you wait for the diaconate, the fruit that you bear will be significantly less and less effective, right? If you're struggling getting around, if you have a lot of health issues, even if you're a holy guy and you preached a really good homily, and there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you can do. But the thing at the end of the day is we need some like 45-year-old deacons. We need some guys that like when they preach, when they teach, when they counsel, when they talk to people, they're speaking from a lived reality and experience. So when a couple comes to them and says, we're arguing all the time, it's like you are uniquely, it doesn't mean the priest cannot offer any advice. It does not mean that at all. But it does mean that you should realize that the deacon is uniquely positioned because he lives that reality.
Yeah.
He's got a mortgage. He's got the financial woes and
married.
stress.
He's got kids.
Married. He's got kids.
That.
And like the dog bit the mailman, he knows all that stuff, right? And so couples are very willing. I get people reaching out to me because I'm a deacon, right? And it's not speaking ill of the priests.
Sure.
They don't have those same exact things. Now, some of them are very good counselors and offer great spiritual advice, and you should have a spiritual director who's a priest, and I highly, highly recommend that.
Sure.
And but there's also this place for this, advice, this counsel that comes
someone who
out
understands
of the heart of living that.
It's the same thing I hear from people that like we were talking about the marriage show, guys that are coming to me, because they go, what I'll hear is I think you can understand, right? Like I'm struggling in these ways. You've struggled in similar ways. So I think you can understand me or you'll get me. Whereas a counselor won't, right?
Yeah.
As somebody who's never experienced these things. And so there's a willingness and an openness. And I can see where being a deacon and having those things you're talking about, a family and having the job and the struggles and all those things, somebody can go like, well, yeah, I can talk to him because he's married. He knows what it's like to be on the wrong side of an argument. He knows what it's like to be stressed out with your kids. He knows what it's like to keep a job and also try to keep the faith in a way, and in a more profound way, honestly, because you have a vocation bit to it. But yeah, like you understand all that, and I've heard guys say that before about priests. Like they're not really. I get they're married to the church, but it's not the same thing as being married to her, right? Like or whatever.
Well, yeah. And honestly, there's truth to some of that, but the thing is, at the end of the day, for the deacon, he is uniquely positioned, and the priest, he's uniquely positioned as well to do what he does.
Sure.
And how he does it. And that's why it's important to understand that like the deacon is not a wannabe priest.
Yeah.
He's not a partial priest. He's not like, people every once in a while say something to me like, well, why'd you stop? Why didn't you keep going for the priesthood?
Yeah, like you just
and a lot of people also don't realize that the deacon, I mean, when the diaconate in this way was restored, there were still deacons because every priest is ordained a deacon transitionally on his way to priesthood. It's the way it's always been.
There's not permanent,
They call us permanent deacons. So we're sacred in the sacred order of deacons, right? Or the holy order of deacons. And we should really drop the word permanent, but we are permanent. So my wife is going to die before me. Now and that's not me saying that, that's her.
Okay.
She's told me that I'm not allowed to die first.
Okay. There you go.
And I'm like, well, if I do, are you going to kill me? What are you going to do? I don't know. But anyway.
Quit feeding me all these McDonald's fries.
when my wife passes away, I've essentially taken, we'll say, a conditional vow of celibacy. I can't marry again.
Yeah.
I will not marry again.
Sure.
Right. And so it's like, this is my last marriage.
Yeah.
This is my first and my last marriage. I will not ever be married again. And that's because the deacon, again, this is holy orders, and a person in holy orders, in the Latin rite at least, cannot get married.
Okay.
Right? So if I had been unmarried when I became a deacon, I wouldn't be able to marry once I became a deacon.
Sure.
Right? My marital state is what it's going to be, unmarried. Right? So when my wife predeceases me, which she has announced that she's going to do, don't get it wrong, because I don't want people to think like, you know, that I'm planning this.
I saw the billboard on I-40 out there. She had the date and everything.
I had no idea, Your Honor. I did not know that was going to happen.
That's right.
But she has declared that to be the case. So when that happens, when she's gone, I'm not married anymore, and I'm wholly devoted to my ministry in the church in that way.
Sure. So. Well, let me ask you this. I mean, we only got a few minutes left. Out of all the things of being a deacon, what is the thing that you value the most, or that like you love doing the most? It's probably a hard question because you do a lot of cool stuff, but like, what do you?
Man, that's hard. That is hard because there's a couple ways to answer that. One of the ways to answer it is to say like, well, what is your greatest charism?
Sure.
You know, and I feel like my greatest charism, this is not bragging. This is me saying like, I'm just like a regular guy. I have a regular guy understanding of things. And so I think I'm pretty good at explaining things in a way that people can
you definitely are.
Well, people can say like, oh, I get that. Either whether it's analogies or not dumbing it down, but simplifying things and explaining them in a way that don't sound unattainable and lofty.
I've heard you give homilies where you're using the Rolling Stones, for example.
Yeah, okay, all right. Yeah. I can't get no satisfaction.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Mick Jagger has been quoted a few times in my homilies. But the thing is, I really feel like using your charisms, whatever they are. There are some deacons that I know, their charism, like that guys that work in the prison ministry.
Yeah.
You know, and I would tell you that he probably would answer, that's the greatest part of my diaconal ministry, is because you live the reality in the fullness, and you live that charism in its fullness, and that just pays off.
And the joy and the peace that you get from it,
And not only that, but that you give. Right?
Yeah,
you give what you get what you give, all those things.
Sure.
So you can answer it that way. But the other way that I would answer this, like the greatest thing for me about being a deacon, is in my process and study of what the diaconate was, my calling to it, the realization of that calling, the acceptance of that calling, and then the moving into that, the formation, and then the ordination, and then the service to the church, and then the ongoing formation, the continuing. I have never felt more realized, fulfilled, completed, on purpose, on mission ever in my life.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't know any other way to do it. So like the greatest thing about being a deacon to me is that I'm living the fullest life I think I could ever live.
Yeah.
And not a lot of guys can say that. Maybe because a lot of guys haven't really stopped to think, what is it they're missing? What do they feel called to? What is it? Why are they always hungry? Why are they always searching? What is it? And I'm like, I don't want to say that I'm complacent, but I realize that I have found what I'm looking for. And I really think that I'm closer than I've ever been. And that little First Communion picture tells me that God had his way of like sneaking in, in my heart early on, that I would realize later that would cement the deal and go like, dude, you were called to be here.
Yeah, this is what I made you for.
And then I give myself fully to the church and to this ministry. And I want other guys to be able to realize that in their life. Whatever their
Yeah.
charism, whatever it is that they feel drawn to do, and maybe it's teaching, but maybe it's also serving the poor, serving the prisoners, working at the church, just helping Father, handling the social outreach ministries at your parish. Whatever those things are, those may be your charisms and gifts, and thank God for those gifts, but you live them in their fullness, in their completeness, like where... Imagine if your mission in life was a neon sign, and it was like going, buzzing right in front of you, right? Life would be so much better. It's so much easier if you are like, which way to go. If it says, walk this way, I'm walking that way. And that way, every time I take a step forward, every morning I wake up, I'm like, Lord, am I in the right place? Am I in the right church? Am I in the right, is this the right thing? And every day I ask that question, and every day I get that answer because I'm a deacon.
Yeah, well, I feel the same way in the mission the Lord's put us on, like in this ministry. It's just like I know what we're supposed to be doing, and there's an incredible peace and a joy when you have a clear definition of what you're called to. And
Amen.
So I know so many men out there are sitting here that have grown in their faith, that have reverted to the faith, who've converted, who've hit rock bottom, whatever your situation is. There's a joy in wanting to pursue the Lord and constantly pursue the Lord. And the diaconate is a wonderful choice of how to do that.
Should we list a couple of guys at Holy Rosary who we think right now?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
No, I'm not going to say their names. I don't want to embarrass them. But there's some guys that are in your group right now that I'm going like, dude would make a great deacon.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, sometimes people say it to me all the time. They come up to me, they're like, you should be a deacon, like Deacon Justin, all the time, like would say that. And I'd say, hey, look, I don't know that I'm called to that. But I also would be lying if I said I haven't prayed about it, because I think a lot of times we're like, whoa, no, I don't want that pressure. But sometimes it's God sending someone to tell you, to put something in your mind. Yeah. I mean, I interviewed Father Jacob Dumont the other day, and he was talking about he was a mischievous kid, and he wasn't really taking the faith seriously, even though his family was super Catholic. And then a priest in the confessional one time asked him, just said, have you considered being a priest? And he said, I had never, not in my life, but I also realized I'd never been asked that question. And I'd never really spent any time with it. And when I did is when I started to feel that it could be a possibility in my life.
Tells me we need to ask that question more
of
other people.
So guys out there, I mean, I know there's some like Andy and some of the other guys down there in Beaumont that are in the diaconate. I know there's a bunch of guys out there that have talked about it. If you're feeling that call, look into it. I mean, Jeff, what's the best way for them to do that? To contact some
First thing
diocese?
you do, go straight to your parish, if you have a deacon, go to your deacon, because he'll know.
Yeah.
Or go to your priest and say, like, I heard this show and it made me think, and I really think that I need to consider this. So what do I do? You can call the diocese and ask for the office of the diaconate or the vicar for clergy or whatever at the diocese. But really, just go to somebody who knows you, because it might be that deacon or priest at your parish to go like, dude, why don't you wait till you're out of jail?
Yeah,
we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
No, I mean, but they know you, right? And they might encourage you and say, I've been wondering if you were ever going to come and ask,
Yeah.
And so, go to your parish. Your parish is where the answers are.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good advice. I mean, folks out there, that God calls us all to things, and this could be one that He's calling you to in your life. So don't look past that. If there's any sort of inkling or interested, go speak to the people that Deacon Jeff just mentioned. And if you want to hear more from a deacon on a weekly and regular basis, you can listen to Deacon Jeff's podcast and his radio show on EWTN, the Catholic Cafe. It's wonderful. There's a couple of both of our friends that are on the show with him there, Sam and Tom, and been doing that,
15 years.
15 years now. He's got 3 million episodes. So you just get back in time and just pack a lot of time. Start at the beginning, and you'll be 20 years older than you were when you started.
Exactly right.
But you'll enjoy all of it. I'll tell you what, I've been on there. It's a wonderful show. Deacon Jeff has a wonderful ministry. He also speaks. So tell them how they can get in touch with you and about you speaking.
Reach out to the show, thecatholiccafe.com. So it's Deacon Jeff at thecatholiccafe.com is the easiest way to get in touch with me. If you want to have me come to visit your parish, that's awesome. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah.
And I would love to come and speak to your parish about the diaconate, about marriage. Marriage is super important. So any of the things you got going on in your parish, I'd love to address them.
Yeah, that's awesome. He can do it, folks. He's at our parish. I hear his homilies all the time. He's fantastic. And you'd be good to have him. So we'll put all that in the show note link. So links to his website and his podcast and all that. But Deacon Jeff, thank you again for showing up. Thanks again for sitting in for Victor. Do whatever you need to the chair. So like,
I'm gonna lower
before
it
he
down.
comes back,
I'm gonna make
that's
it like 8 inches lower
That's
so when
right.
he shows up.
Be like that old Johnny Carson joke or whatever on Saturday Night Live where he's sitting 30 feet on top of the guy. But yeah, thank you for always showing up, and thanks for sharing your vocation and your heart for it with us.
Amen, brother.
All right, God bless you. Thank you.